name's Abhi, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about GovTech trends and what's happening in the industry. I'll explain a little bit how I know this in a minute, but I'm going to start by telling you a story about how I got punched in the face, or almost punched in the face. This is about 10 years ago, almost to this month. I was in Kansas City giving a talk at a conference with a bunch of entrepreneurs, explaining how I thought government technology and city technology, like you guys are working on, would be an awesome, awesome opportunity. At the end of the event, when I came up and talked to him, and I explained this, that there's a huge annual market, that there's a massive amount of opportunity. And at the end, he came up to me and said, hey, why did my company fail? Because there's this huge opportunity. That's why he wanted to punch me in the face. It was because we didn't have programs like this at that time. We had just started the Code for America Accelerator, and now there's things like the Leading Cities program and many other ones that are helping companies take advantage of this massive, massive opportunity in the local government and state government space. So today, I'm going to talk to you a little about myself, and then mostly about what are the trends and what's changing in the GovTech market. So a little bit about me. So I started this company called Code for America, which some of you may know. It was designed as a Peace Corps for geeks, where we sent developers and designers into cities to help them unpack ideas that are interesting and stuff to build. We built a bunch of stuff then. You guys are building better stuff now. But the whole idea then was to basically get cities to think more broadly about what's possible. After that, I went to the city of Los Angeles, where I was the first chief data officer there. That's a weird picture of me with an iPad, you can see. And then I went to the city of Sacramento, where I ran the innovation office. And there the focus was really building an entrepreneurial economy within the city of Sacramento. Not exactly relevant here, but still important. We can talk about that if you guys ever want to. Now what I do is I run a consulting and investment firm called Ethos Labs that invests in GovTech companies and civic tech companies. We should talk if that's something you want to do. And what I focus on is basically helping the public sector do its job better. So, but today the goal we're going to talk about is what's changing in GovTech and what makes it more exciting for GovTech companies to be more exciting, more possible. So the first is there are new positions and new leadership roles happening within local government. These are two of my old friends, Nigel and Chris. This is back from 2011. These guys started an office in Boston called the Mayor's Office of New Urban Mechanics. The idea was they should just figure out cool, new, interesting ways to use technology to help citizens interact with their city. That idea was so cool that my organization, Code for America, and then me after that, basically took that idea and said, let's take it to scale. Like every city should have people like that thinking about how things are changing. And so now you can look across the country and see there's at least 100 different CIOs, CXOs, chiefs of innovation, whatever you want to call them, in cities doing this kind of work. And so the point for you guys is, as your companies are growing, if you're going to try to work with them, is to understand who those people are. So the funny thing is, you should realize is they don't always know that they have that kind of clout. They don't know they have a C-level title. I remember once I was in a meeting with a mayor and her cabinet, and I explained to them, I was like, oh, you should have these C-level roles to manage technology. She's like, you know what? I would love to have like a director of technology. I'd love to have a CIO. The director of technology was in the room, but the mayor just didn't know that. So sometimes there's a problem of a lack of connection between the technology and the political leadership, and that's something you should be aware of. And the other thing is, like, many cities have CIOs, but even if they have CIOs, the budget isn't always centralized. It's not always in one central IT budget. It's sometimes spread across different departments. So what I would say is for that is do your homework. So there's a couple of places you can look at, marketplace.city, the Atlas, And there's eRepublic tools where you can find out who's running these places and who to talk to. Second point is there's new openings, which is to say that the people always think that there's this massive gap in technology leadership and talent within government. The thing is that doesn't change. So this is literally a slide from 2010, me describing how Code for America should help cities. I showed this exact slide to a lot of CIOs and CTOs and mayors and city managers, and they said, none of this has changed. Which is to say, this is why state and local government relies so heavily on the private sector to deliver its job, because they just don't have the people, as you can see here. And again, over time, you can see the money just keeps increasing, even when there's risks of a recession, questions about budget. State and local government still spends more and more money on technology because they don't have the staff internally. So the point is, they will never have enough staff, so they need partners. And that's what you guys could be. Because here's the thing, like these are things that didn't exist 20 years ago. Like drones weren't there, like connected cars weren't there. And most of the people who work in government were there 20 years ago. And even if they're not that old, they still haven't had to deal with policy around these things. So when you're thinking about working with cities, first of all, think about making them an accessible partner. Realize that they have some barriers, but you can break them down. Realize that they're actually a very consistent customer if you sell to them. And even if you don't sell to them, there's an opportunity just to be a data partner. And then moving on to the next part, like, so when you think about what cities want and what they're doing, this is a friend of mine who's the CIO of Evanston, Illinois. He said, when COVID hit, we had to stand up Zendesk in a few days to serve our residents. So that is to say, there's new expectations that cities are having, right? Like, we're not just expecting them to do a 2-year RFP to build a new CRM system. So we did a survey last year of statistically relevant of all governments across the country. And these are the main things that came out: cybersecurity, design, and offsetting costs. And given that, the things I would recommend you all focus on is, one, open data and using it in a reliable and accessible way. As you all probably saw firsthand, when we had COVID happen, everyone started looking at maps of where things are. Beforehand, when I was chief data officer, and you can see in the books here, no one cared about the data we had, but now people do care. But the data is less about transparency and more about decision-making and letting the public know what's going on. So I'd recommend for any company that's doing this work now is how to build trust with the data they have. The second thing I'd recommend is that most companies that are trying to sell to governments, and this is based on the data, just want to sell them a solution for, say, 20K a year, 50K a year. I used to recommend that, candidly. But now I've learned that that's actually not sustainable and not what cities want either. An old friend of mine told me that, like, it may seem old-fashioned that no one gets fired by hiring IBM. And the point that he was trying to make wasn't that, like, we should all go buy IBM. It was more that IBM provided services atop their technology that really addressed other people's needs. So the idea of implementation and training are really important. And finally, I just wanted to say that, like, the other big thing that came out of the research was the importance of design. You know, in the past, we all know that government design has been awful. And the way we interact with most government services has not been friendly. That's changing in two important ways. So first, accessibility has become the norm. So anything you're building needs to be ADA accessible and built in that way. And the second is governments themselves are setting standards of how good their design should be. So the US Digital Service and even California have their own design systems. And lastly, I'll just say that, like, I've had conversations that, like, CIOs and CTOs will not work with the company because they are not built to be multilingual. So keep that in mind. And the big point here is that like government has to work for everyone. So takeaways here are A, do your homework about the way cities are changing. B, be a strong partner. And 3, do great design and do great work. And I'll just say that in closing that like there's never been a more important time to do what we do. We all know that things are tough, things are hard, and you all working with cities, working with governments, make things better. Thanks.